John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel round himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who is bathed does not need to wash except the feet, but is entirely clean, and you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you should do also as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor their messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." The Gospel of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. Grace, mercy, and peace from God the Father and Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. It is a solemn week for many of us who sadly watched the beautiful and historic Notre Cathedral burn on Monday. And it was actually a week of fires. On Friday, there was a fire at Camp Lutherwood in Oregon, and the lodge burned to the ground. The Notre Dame Cathedral fire, and on the same day, there was also a fire at a mosque in Jerusalem, at the third holiest site in Islam. And in Colorado, 150 schools had to shut down due to a very serious threat surrounding the 20th anniversary of the Columbine shooting. How sad that we are still dealing with that tragedy. And many homes were destroyed and 8 lives lost in a recent string of tornadoes that hit the South. In very recent weeks, 3 historic black churches were set on fire in Louisiana. There are so many things. Heart in Ashes read many of the headlines of the French papers on the morning after the fire. For many around the world, it is true, our hearts are in ashes. We hurt. We started our season of Lent with ashes being placed on our foreheads to remind us of our mortality. And I think all the recent news summed up the meaning of Ash Wednesday as the news reminded us of the words, "To dust you shall return." And even things that seem like they will stand forever, like an 850-year-old cathedral, own mortality. As my heart sank as I watched the fire, I felt an overwhelming sadness. But a classmate of mine was able to put the depth of her thought and emotion into words, and I share them now with permission. She wrote, "As I reflect on the depth of pain that millions of hearts are feeling over the destruction of Notre Dame today, I am also mindful of the millions of hearts broken when the sacred lands of the Black Hills were forbidden to those that recognize them as the heartbeat of the sacred traditions, or how the Dalai Lama felt when he and his people were forced into exile. Losing a sacred space is gut-wrenching, as a piece of your soul feels disconnected from the love of God. As we enter Holy Week, I imagine that this is also how the Israelites felt when they watched their temple be destroyed and they were sent into exile, and how Jesus' followers felt when they watched his last breath on a cross, lost and disconnected, alone and heartbroken, and not able to see hope. To all the people who have ever been on your knees begging God to do something, to stop the pain that comes with loss, or for those desiring to be reconnected to God's love, my prayers are with you." Signed, Nicole. Yet there is much to witness and much to think about this Holy Week. Today, as we embrace Maundy or Holy Thursday, we see and hear many overwhelming elements of the last days of Jesus Christ our Lord. We will see forgiveness of sins and laying on of hands, and soon we will remember Jesus and the Last Supper. We read about the foot washing, which is a great act of service that Jesus himself performed. We will see the stripping of the altar, and at the end we will leave in silence to ready ourselves and our hearts to return tomorrow as we participate in the crucifixion of our Lord. But this service is just the smallest reflection of the complicated last few hours that Jesus faced. The disciples and Jesus came from the solemn supper together, and then they entered a garden to pray. There was an arrest and accusations and betrayal, and then nails in the hands and the feet, and a cross, and a death. And we walk with Jesus to the cross. We put him on it. Whether or not we're actually there, we are all convicted as ones who have sinned deeply, and we had a part in his crucifixion. And these are dark days. And yet, in the midst of them, there are the words in John 13:34. We hear Jesus say, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also should love one another." In other words, be to others as I have been to you, and show others the same kind of love and mercy and forgiveness that I have shown you. Yes, go and do likewise. Sometimes we forget. We forget that all of this is about love. And it's a tall order to be like Jesus. It's a tall order to be even a tiny bit like Jesus. But that's what Jesus is asking us to do. Later we'll come to the table and we'll eat the smallest of meals with the biggest of meanings. We'll receive just a morsel of bread and a sip of wine, and that is enough. That small meal is enough to be filled with the love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ, because that is all it takes. It takes just a morsel. Can we go and do likewise and take just a morsel of Christ's love and feed it to the world? We will watch the stripping of the altar. Are there places we can strip away stuff in our own lives, like bad thoughts or bad habits? What can we strip away to make room for more love in this world? Can we strip away lines and prejudices that cast others out? We will leave in silence. Are there words that we just do not need to say today? Can we uplift others with our words instead of putting them down? Can we use our words to help and not hurt, to pray and not condemn? There is much to think about and much to ponder. Our hearts are in ashes. Yes, as we sit here again and we hear again the great acts of love and forgiveness that Jesus did for us, which took him all the way to the cross, we remember that we are created anew and we are lifted from the ashes because of the love that Jesus has touched us all. It has baptized us all. It has fed us all. And it has created us all to be new. It has changed us. And now you're to bring that kind of love right out into the world. Just a morsel of it will do. As the fires burn and violence is easy to come by these days, there's still the love that Jesus has. And there's still the undeserved forgiveness. And there is you, and there's me, and there's a world out there who needs just a morsel of the greatest love that we will ever know. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should